Welcome. My name is Bill Boswell. With me today is my intrepid co-host, Roxy.
Hello.
Hello. Today we're going to be kicking off our new podcast. This is the first episode of The Californians. Basically, the premise is this. Roxy and I differ significantly in our viewpoints on a number of issues, but we're both Californians and we both love to talk about this stuff. So we're going to discuss issues relating to California and Californians. And with that, Roxy, what's our first topic?
All right. So today we thought we'd talk about the mask mandates and the vaccine mandates in schools and how that's affecting the education system and particularly how it's affecting our children.
Yeah, I think you're going to find that we're more alike on this issue than not, but no, really, I mean, well, we'll just
Don't
conclude.
believe that. Bill thinks we're a communist state already. Don't believe that.
Okay, maybe I'm totally wrong. But so Roxy and I both teach. I'm like a glorified high school shop teacher. I kind of moonlight as like a volunteer thing. But Roxy, you're a professional. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I do the early childhood education thing. I have a classroom full of 20 children and I work with three other teachers in my classroom. I belong to a great organization that does a lot of outreach and helps uplift families that live in poverty or have other types of needs. So that's my work. I love my job.
I love your job too, and I love that you do it.
It's super fun.
So, have you seen any, or what effects have you seen due to the pandemic in your classroom? I guess just the gamut, physical, mental, emotional, all that stuff.
Yeah. So it's actually quite a lot. And it's of course it's a more nuanced subject than just being black and white. Like you can't just on the face say that quarantines were good or not good. And you can't say on the face that masks are good or not good. We've had COVID cases. I had COVID. I caught it in my classroom. Um, but let's see, developmental wise, what has this done? So we managed to stay open. Not all of our classrooms did. A lot of our classrooms closed. And we were able to provide in-person school for little pods of 5. So like I would have a pod of 5 children, another teacher would have a pod of 5 children. And while we were not out there serving a larger community, which was the negative aspect, the positive aspect was so much one-on-one with these kids. It was just such a beautiful year. And we were really able to like dig in deep with the children's needs and help them along their way. So that was really special. And I got to build a lot of really good, close relationships with each of those children. But now that we're back, as you would imagine, we have so many social, emotional issues going on. It's not even funny. And some of that is the trauma that COVID has brought for children who may have lost grandparents or parents to COVID, or children whose families are experiencing homelessness, which has spiked in my county, especially. Um, uh, Other things like not having access to that preschool setting to be able to socialize. But on the other hand, I find that children who were able to stay home with parents who are actively engaged in their children's academic life have improved so much that I have a good handful of children that are 4 years old and already reading. So I think what's happening here is the pandemic has exacerbated the situations that were already at hand. If it was a negative situation, it made it even worse. If there were positive aspects, it sort of allowed you to hone in on those specific situations and made them better in a sense, because parents were able to spend that time with their children. So, and teachers, like in my classroom, were able to spend that time with those kids.
You
What
know,
about your setting?
oh yeah, kind of the same. So, My school closed abruptly when we started getting those stay-at-home orders, March of, 2020.
Yeah.
And we went home for the weekend and then didn't open back up the next week, and it was fairly jarring, I'd say. I'd say about half my class just disappeared, even though we reached out through Zoom and uh, other platforms. The technology just wasn't present in a lot of households. And I'm kind of teaching in the same socioeconomic setting that you are. There's sometimes not a lot of support at home because everybody's in emergency mode and damage control mode all the time. And there's not a lot
Yeah.
of room for, something extra.
Right. They're already in crisis mode. They're living in crisis mode constantly already.
All the
And
time.
then the pandemic on top of that.
Yeah, it's just like one more crisis in a long string of crises that,
Right.
negatively impact the support that's available. So I lost half my class, and I'm not super technology savvy, so I had to get kind of spun up really quick on this stuff, and
Wasn't that fun?
you
Trying to
know, it
figure out
kind
all
of
the Zoom and links and interactive stuff. Oh my gosh.
well, yeah, I mean, it was very disconcerting at first, but I feel like it was ultimately a good thing for all of us to be more literate in that realm. In
Oh
fact,
yeah,
now
good
that
point. Good
we're
point.
back in person, I teach one of my classes on Zoom so we can have guests come in from all over the world and, view like video content and talk about it. A couple weeks ago, we built a spreadsheet together online and stuff like that. It's totally great for you. You don't have to drag people in to do that. But other stuff is just like horrifyingly soulless without that human connection. And so we got through the latter part of spring 2020, kind of crutching along on Zoom. And that's when I kind of learned that, a wide world had opened up via the technology. And basically every week I had a new special guest star come in and talk to the class about amazing stuff that it would be totally
Right.
infeasible to bring
Right.
students to in person, or bring the, guest star into my class in person.
Right.
So that was a huge bonus.
Yeah. So you're seeing positive and negative aspects just like me.
Yeah, but you know what I heard when you were talking mostly, and I'm such a proponent of this, is the individualized support.
Oh, I knew this was coming.
I,
The no more than 6 kids in a class fight.
I swear by
That's all
that.
we should have.
Well, but I mean, you said five, and you said it was amazing. So, do you agree or disagree?
Well, I think to say that just like point blank is kind of lacking a little bit of context. And let me explain what I mean. Um, especially as children grow older. No, let me take that back. Not even especially as children grow older, even when they're younger. Um, when they're younger, children play. And while they're playing with their peers or by themselves or interacting with the environment around them, with or without a teacher there, they are learning. That is how they learn, is through play, right?
Yeah.
As children get older, they learn to be self sufficient, how to look in that textbook, how to do research, how to do group projects, how to, use their minds to think critically to get the job done. I think it is equally important that children have moments in time where they're not relying solely on that teacher to be with them. So, what I mean is that you can have a classroom of 20 and rotate your time for that one-on-one, for those one-on-one moments with smaller groups of children. And I know a lot of teachers have adapted to be able to do that. I do agree that our classroom sizes are a bit overwhelming. And the problem is, and you can talk to our professor friend about this, is when you have more than one class that you're teaching, it's not just those 25, 30 kids in that one class. It's that times 6. You have 6 of those classes per day. So it's all those tests, right? We're talking like 300 tests, 300 book reports to grade. Um, all the homework that comes in every single day. And those standards are not set by teachers, really. Those are packages that are adopted by the school, which is part of what they have to get done in order to maintain, their academic status. That's the political side of it, which is probably another podcast. So I'm not going to totally go into that.
Well,
But
but it kind of sounds like you're agreeing that the individualized attention in the smaller
um,
groups
so individualization is necessary, and small activities where there's one-on-one support from the teacher is absolutely necessary, but it doesn't have to be so constant that the teacher can't rotate that time into large group activities or self-conducted activities or rotating between smaller groups of children. So to say that it should be a 1-to-6 ratio of teacher to children all the time, that's not exactly necessary. You can do 1-to-20 as long as that teacher has available to them moments to be able to produce that one-on-one time. But I don't think like 1-to-20 in like say like a 4th or 5th grade setting is going to be too overwhelming for a teacher. I think what's overwhelming is a lot of the standards that are due, and like I said, all the assignments that have to get done and turned in, and all of the grading that must be done. I mean, you do realize that a lot of teachers lost their aides when things like the No Child Left Behind Act and all of that jazz was going on. So it's a lot of the paperwork and standards that teachers have to reach for that is so stressful. It's not necessarily the children, although in some school settings, there's 35 plus children per class, and yes, that is a problem.
well, and yeah, times 5. So,
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
and that's really kind of like when the wheels come off the cart, I think, because if you are dealing with almost 200 students daily,
Yeah.
I mean, there is just no way you can give individualized attention unless it's in sort of like an emergency capacity, like a child is having some sort of major issue or, behavioral or mental, physical health,
Mhm.
and then like you got to like jump on that, which further takes time away from, any kind of relevance to the other students in the class. So, yeah, and you know what, you're right. Like being a versatile, skilled teacher with good time management at 20, no problem. I'm kind of a newbie, so my skill with time management and whatnot isn't, great.
I
But
don't know if ours ever is, to be honest. I've been at this thing for, over 10 years now, and you just kind of got to learn to like roll with the
roll the
punches.
punches.
Kids, I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah.
kids are chaos. That's just the way it is, and you just kind of have to roll with it, and really being on your toes and having like that bucket of knowledge and resources inside of you that you can just pull out of at any given moment. No, it's and a lot of self-care as a teacher, because you have to make sure that you are like solid and even keel inside, or else you're going to have those stupid bursts in front of your children, you know
Well,
you'll
and
probably
that's
get fired for it.
another thing I find so confounding about the class size issue is like when you put a human being under the kind of pressure that they're responsible for almost 200 students a day to
Yeah.
like learn some like one size fits all standard,
Mhm.
that can't not crush somebody's spirit. Unless you're like Jaime Escalante or something, but like that guy was like, one in a million. I mean, just like your average human being, that is a hell of a lot of pressure to put on somebody. And then we could go into like the lack of support and like, all that for teachers from admin, from a funding perspective, all that. But you know what? We're getting kind of off topic. We were talking about COVID in schools.
COVID and mandates and stuff, right? So, well, let's talk about, the vaccination mandates for teachers then, because there's a lot of hullabaloo out there that, like doctors are quitting in droves and the police force and teachers and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know,
I'm
we
interested to
we
hear.
did what's that?
Oh, I was just saying I'm interested to hear your take on all that.
Well, to be honest, my company did lose some teachers. It did happen, and there's a lot of shifting over, which employees are going to cover what, and new hiring going on. Um, you know, it's not that it's not happening. I think that it's not happening at such a large scale that it's going to disrupt the backbone the backbone systems in this country, such as our education system. Um, but I
Well,
do know that it's happening. I
let me
think it's
ask you this.
dumb.
Let me ask you this. In your, are you part of a district or are you outside all that as pre-K?
We are out. My program is outside of that, but we do work with school districts because we have satellite classrooms on their campuses. And so whatever they adopt as a policy, we have to abide by that in order to work on site.
So our current district policy, and I'm in a charter school, but it's still part of a district,
Yes.
is you have to be vaccinated or you get tested weekly. That's not the same for you guys?
Um, I believe we had a vaccination deadline. So
Maybe it just shifted to that. I'm actually vaccinated. So once I realized I didn't have to, talk about it with admin anymore, I stopped doing that. But what do you think about mandating vaccines for teachers? Do you think that's appropriate?
yes, I do. I think that we've done this for a long time with other vaccines. I think it's a matter of public health. It's good reasoning because that's what it means to live in a society. I know people that have been anti-vax for years, way before all this COVID nonsense came up. And they chose to keep like their children home, for instance, because they did not want to vaccinate their children. So that has always been, your freedom of choice. You can do those things. But I do absolutely believe in mandates for vaccines.
Well, and here's what I think you'll find surprising. I actually don't disagree that mandating that teachers get vaccinated is a good thing. And for the reasons you stated, like a teacher could be a flashpoint. Teachers are more susceptible than their students statistically to becoming very ill. I mean, you got
Right.
COVID in your classroom.
3 of us did in my classroom, 3 teachers in my classroom. And at that time we had 5 teachers total. And so, yeah,
Yeah, I mean,
it's,
that's striking.
and one of us, ended up having to go to the hospital. I did not, but I still had it really bad with lingering effects for like 6 months. Um,
Whoa.
yeah. Well, but the thing is that, you know, having the COVID itself has caused its own disruptions, and it is a life or death situation for a lot of people. And, thankfully none of us have lost our lives, but death was a
Well,
possibility.
and I mean, I kind of feel like the whole like who's at risk from COVID has been pretty irresponsibly portrayed. Like on one side of the coin, you never know if somebody might have some adverse reaction to COVID that nobody could see coming. But that's kind of the argument that anti-vaxxers make too. It's like you don't know until it's too late if you're that 1 in a million that has that adverse reaction. And as the population ages, the risk from COVID complications goes up pretty significantly. I was reading something from the Mayo Clinic today that said 81% of COVID fatalities were in people over 65. And I was looking at some statistics online, and from the start of COVID till now, 576 children under 17 have succumbed to COVID. So, and then, when you get to like 80 plus, it's like 250,000. So, I mean, there's a huge discrepancy in like who is actively in danger of COVID. And I feel like a lot of our policy has been geared towards those 65 plus people, because really they're the ones that are not only in power, but they're the ones in danger. And, I didn't really finish my whole COVID experience at my school piece earlier, but I'd like to kind of circle back to that
Yeah,
and
sure.
talk a little bit about that. So when the school year started for fall 2020, spring 2021, I teach a class where we build a tiny home. And that was allowed to go forward in person due to some loophole, I guess, in the stay-at-home orders mandate for education. And what I found is it was a real lifeline for a lot of my students. And I mean, they talked about that often. In fact, the valedictorian of our school, who took my class, in his speech talked a lot about how that kind of saved his life, being able to get out of his house for a few short hours every week and do all the things you talked about, work together in groups, socialize, problem solve, be out in the fresh air, in the sunlight, just like living like a human being.
Right.
So I actually added an extra day of the class just to give the kids more opportunity to get out and about. And usually when you add like another day of class, that's optional. Nobody takes you up on that other than, maybe one or two.
But they were all coming, weren't they?
75% of them came.
Yeah.
Yes, because they had somewhere to go. And
that's awesome.
yeah, so that was kind of like pretty striking for me as far as the mental health aspects of stay-at-home orders. And then coming back to school this year, fall of 2021, I did an exercise with my incoming students where we talked about like kind of like what your greatest struggle is right now. And 80% of my students talked about re-entering society after quarantining for COVID. So,
wow.
Yeah, I mean, this is, you and I have been essential workers this whole time. We've been out and about. I even found it sort of nice to not have to deal with the hordes of people in their cars.
Traffic. I remember when it started coming back, how much
Dude, it
complaining you
is
were
worse
doing.
than ever. It's worse than ever.
California was beautiful once again. I know.
And like, I remember going out to San Bernardino and that awful layer of smog was gone.
Yeah, amazing, right?
Gone. I mean, you could see the mountains and, have you ever been to like Lake Arrowhead where you drive out to the rim and it's like just a sea of freaking poisonous smog. It's horrible.
Oh.
So that was all gone and now it's back.
And now it's back.
And now it's back.
It came back almost immediately.
It came back immediately within the, like, I think I was at Lake Arrowhead in like early July and people were kind of back in action mid-June. So in 2 weeks it was back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember like when the first 2 weeks of everybody actually staying home happened, the CO2 levels dropped dramatically and everyone was like, okay, see, this is the impact that we have on the earth. And
well,
I haven't heard much about that since then, but I mean, it's a great real-time study. So
Yeah. I remember seeing like pictures from around the world, like, mountain views from like Delhi that hadn't been seen in a generation. And, you know,
Yeah.
it's
There
extreme.
was some nonsense going on too. There was some silly things being spread around, like certain animals returning to areas that wasn't actually happening.
Oh,
So, I
yeah.
mean,
I got
there
such
were
a kick out
conspiracies running rampant and memes out there just trying to hook people. But,
Yeah.
there was some realness to it. The CO2 levels absolutely did drop back down. You know what also happened though was people were like, okay, well we're gonna go enjoy nature while we're out, right? So like the hiking trails were packed all of a sudden. And then Newsom was like, oh my God, look what's happening to the lands. All of the land management teams were like, this is insane. There's trash everywhere. I mean, humans are disgusting. I can't say that enough. I hate how we do not take
What
care
is
of our earth.
wrong with
They had
people?
to close the trails.
Yeah,
Right. And it wasn't
dude.
because they didn't want us to run into each other in case of COVID. It was because of the frickin' littering they were doing and the ruining of the lands. We have a park nearby that they still close on the weekends because too many people come there and they trashed the waterway that we have there. They trashed it. So now it needs time to fucking fix itself. It's so irritating. People irritate me.
So yeah, so like, why did we stop? Why did we let them back out of their houses?
Oh, seriously. So that was one point I really wanted to say about this education piece and the effect that it had on children and the community at large. Um, was for me, it was okay that we all stayed home, right? Like I was worried about the mental health aspect as well. Not just because we knew that they were abusive homes that children couldn't escape from, or there was food scarcity homes that the children didn't have access to food. Our personal districts where I live in the county where I live did a really good job of making outreach programs and getting people food still because we know that the schools feed most of what their children eat, right? So that still happened and I was grateful for that. But aside from those two issues, there is a mental health issue like what your students were talking about, where, you're trapped in home. It's the same environment every day. They need that social interaction. They need to go out and be about in the world. There's a health to that, right? That's healthy for a lot of people. And we weren't getting that. And a lot of our students suffered from it. I don't know why we continued to think that we needed the same freaking academic standards that entire year. Children are resilient. The world could go on pause and we were going to be the fuck okay. Instead, they came up with all of these crazy computer programs that all the kids needed to sit down on the freaking computer for all day long in these stupid Zoom classes where they weren't learning shit anyways, and they still had to stay on afterwards to do their freaking homework. So now they're getting all this extra screen time when it would have been
Yeah.
so much more beneficial just to give them some shit to read, a few interactions a week, and go the fuck outside.
Okay,
Relax.
so
The
let me.
mental health, the mental health that could have combated just getting outside and relaxing and not being so damn stressed about getting it done, getting it done, getting it done. Like, that's how we should have dealt with this. And I didn't understand why it was so hardcore. Like, why did we try to keep the same standards? It was a mistake. That was more stressful, in my opinion.
Well, that's that top-down, one-size-fits-all approach that I'm always railing against. And to circle back to what you were saying about your pre-K students learning through play, that's true for everybody. Like my high school seniors that I have building this tiny house this year.
Yeah.
So, and it's exactly what you said too. I have 20 students in that class. So you can't all be like using dangerous power tools at the same time as an
Right.
untrained group, or, bad things are likely to happen. So we do like a group thing where we cycle people in and out, and like we have a basketball hoop set up there. So when, kids aren't putting stuff together to build a home, they're shooting hoops. We have music going, student chosen, everybody's like singing along, and,
Yeah,
some
that's
of us are
nice.
even doing a little dancing, and, we had like a pull-up contest when we put a beam in. I mean, like that isn't messing around. that's keeping people mentally engaged and invested in something. So all their faculties are about them to advance. Like, that's my big thing with education in general that I find so damaging is this idea that you need to force students into this narrow little channel of
Right.
instruction that is contrary to their entire holistic being. So like, staring at a screen, getting like unilateral instruction is total bullshit.
Yeah.
Like,
And I feel like a lot of teachers had to throw their hands in the air because they knew it wasn't working. Like they're
yeah,
not holding these kids' grades against them, but they still somehow expected all this work to get done. And it wasn't the teachers, it was that the school districts had to adopt something so that they could continue to show that they're reaching these
progress.
academic goals that are set forth by dun, 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 legislators who don't know fucking shit about education and child development. It's the most baffling system that we have. It's you're always ragging on teachers, right? In the actual school system.
So
Like,
I've softened considerably after
oh,
becoming
good,
one,
because I'm going to keep
realizing,
talking shit to you over that.
yeah, no, no. I mean, so like what my observation was before I was a teacher was that, teachers were kind of like part of the problem. And, some are. There's some really lame people that should not have that as a job, like in charge of
Oh,
important
absolutely.
things. And I mean, that's just a fact. But really, what I've noticed is kind of what I said before when you're just inundated with, hundreds of students and these standards that are, I mean, unilateral. The standards are one size fits all, and you're supposed to shoehorn, this diverse crowd of people that may or may not learn the way you can teach, may or may not have the support at home to, make up any differences that need to be addressed. I mean, it's an impossible
Hmm.
task. So why wouldn't you 5 years into such a profession be totally burned out and just basically going through the motions? So, I mean, really what I've kind of identified as the problem now, and this is, above and beyond what happened with COVID, that just kind of brought it into sharp relief, is, this idea that one size fits all, and you're just like, every student is just a number and a commodity to procure funding to perpetuate this broken ass system where, learning is kind of accidental. I mean, it's why our education system produces people that can read and write and do math and, that sort of thing is because it's so repetitive. Like we repeat ourselves in various degrees and various formats as educators year after year for 12 years. I mean, anybody's going to pick up the basics by being beat over the head, like that. But at what cost? Like, how many students come out of school hating learning, quote unquote learning, burned out on education, can't wait to never sit in a desk, hear a lecture again? I mean, that's a super horrific tragedy. Because
uh,
kids come into like your kids, they all love to learn, don't they?
oh no, we have a lot of, children who are like, I miss my mom. I
Yeah.
want to go
But are
home.
they curious and excited to like experience the things that you?
They're, I mean, it's a little bit different for young children because of attachment issues. So that's a whole developmental thing that goes on with families. And that really comes down to like the parents' attachment styles. So But there are moments throughout every day for every child where they're excited and they're having fun and, you know, uh, they're taken care of. It's a warm, safe, friendly, loving, encouraging, supportive environment. So, yeah, I have kids who do that to their parents just so that they can stay home and spend more time with their parents. They'll be
Uh,
like, I don't want to go to school. So and so's pushing me. And the parent comes to me and they're like, oh, my kid says this kid's pushing them and this and that. And I'll say, we're definitely working on body space. It's the thing that the whole class is working on. It's preschool. That's what preschool does, right? And they'll be like, well, they say they don't want to come to school anymore. And I'm like, all right, I'll tell you what, I'm going to take video and pictures of the day and I'm going to write you up a printout by the end of the day and tell you how his day was so you can take it home and talk with them. And so this parent comes in and I had this whole thing prepared. She's like, oh, thank you so much for showing me that because, in her mind, she's getting it from her kid who's playing her. Oh, they're having a terrible day at school, but that's not what's going on. The kid knows and is emotionally tugging on mom's heartstrings, because he wants to spend time with her. You can blame
yeah.
the kid. But, and then the parents are like, wow, you guys do all this at school? We're like, yeah, your kid's having a great time.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh,
And then the kid's
yeah.
like, yeah, but, and the kid gets caught, and they don't want to say to mom, but we get that a lot. That happens every year with several kids. But like I said, that's an attachment thing that goes on with families. That's a little bit different.
Yeah, I can see that. My kids both struggled with that when they went to preschool.
Yeah.
And I remember I actually went to the preschool to kind of like do a little research on, what their day was like, because I was kind of getting those same kind of reports.
Uh-huh.
And so I showed up and oh my God, I had the most amazing time. Like, I just kind of got to hang out and go through the preschool day, and like little kids were like running up and like just giving me these like unconditional love hugs. I was
Yep.
like, this is like
Yep.
melting my heart right now. This is like the
Yep.
like, so that's your day to day. I'm really happy.
Oh, what do you think keeps me going? I
I
mean, it
know it's
keeps my
hard.
heart full. But you know what? I will say that we need more dads visiting preschool classrooms and basically classrooms in general. Like, I was reading this beautiful little article the other day that had a bunch of men who were all dads, like 20 or 30 of them. And they called themselves like the dad brigade. It was so cute. And they were like, we go to this high school and our junior high schools and we take shifts and stuff and just hang out amongst the kids, visit the classrooms, help with homework, there during lunchtime and during recess time and all this other stuff. And the school fights and bullying that was going on is just gone because the dads are there and their presence just makes kids feel, they feel really good that the dads are there because it brings an importance to them and they have that connection of that father figure, which a lot of families don't have. And
Well, in a
I
sense,
just,
a community too, which gets lost,
that's what it's all
like
about.
in kind of an institutionalized environment where there's like like an authority figure that is removed from, like a kind of a visceral, like tribal family unit kind of feeling. Like I
Yeah.
notice that a lot in sports. And I mean, don't get me wrong, sports have an extremely toxic side, kid sports, definitely.
Yeah.
But there's also like that kind of like community accountability thing where like, you know, the coach is somebody's dad and the assistant coach is somebody's mom and the team manager is, another mom and the,
Hmm.
guy that like, gets the snacks is somebody's dad, and like
Hmm.
just
Oh,
having
for
that,
sure.
that plethora of positive adult influences is, it's just modeling, like, here's how we
Yeah.
act. I noticed that at jujitsu a lot too. Like a lot of the adults that have kids in the gym we train at. I mean, myself and my kids all train, and that's actually kind of common that uh, parents whose kids do that sport also train, and there's a real tight knit sense of accountability. And it's funny, like none of us have trouble like bringing each other's kids back in line. Like I was sitting in the stands the other day and my son was like acting up and punching somebody with his gloves on in line. And, one of the coaches was just like, dude, that's not what we're doing right now. And she's much younger than me, like probably like early 20s. So she kind of looked at me like, oh, is this, grumpy old man gonna criticizing his kid? And I just gave a big smile and a thumbs up because that's exactly what my son needed at that moment,
Right.
Role
Well, as a society, we've really gotten away from that.
So far away from that.
Well, and there was good reason for it. You had nuns beating the shit out of kids' hands with rulers and stuff, and you had the neighbor who could whip your kid with the belt, and like all of that had to stop. And so we kind of went overboard, and everyone got sue happy. You have to sue the school if my kid gets hurt on the seesaw, the merry-go-round. You have to sue the school if my kid gets hit by something else, and there's just all this stuff. People got sue happy.
You know what though?
They took out the sense of community that you're talking about, and a lot of my parents unfortunately forget that I have to have a set of rules to keep children safe, or expectations that keep the classroom friendly for each other and respectful for each other. And a lot of parents don't quite understand that I am that figure while their children are there, that they can't just do whatever they want while they're in my care, So.
Well, yeah, and I mean, not only are there moral implications to that, but also legal and you know. But you know what? We're kind of getting a little bit off topic with the COVID thing. Maybe we should, and I love having these talks with you. I mean, we could go on and on. But what do you think what do you think is going to happen going forward, and what do you think should happen going forward with this ongoing pandemic in our classrooms?
In our classroom. So I'm glad to see that we're implementing vaccination mandates for children as well. And that it's going to be available for 5 and older now, and it's going to get even younger than that very soon. I'm extremely saddened that so many people have been so led down a rabbit hole in a direction that's a threat to public safety, and that they feel threatened by these mandates, so much so that they're like, it's communism and total control, and when will these people wake up, and let's storm the Capitol and let's do it again, and all this other nutty stuff.
Jade Helm.
I am so sick to my stomach over how this is developed. I mean, I feel like it's okay to have questions. I feel it's okay to have reservations. I feel it's okay to wait a minute and just sort of like see, what this is all about. I feel like it's people's responsibility to get the correct facts, and moving forward. What I hope is that we find a way to combat the extreme disinformation bubbles that exist. It's so bad that it's on the floor in Washington with our politicians now, and I personally feel like that shit should be illegal. But we have to find a way to get people to understand the difference between the data that is peer reviewed and universally accepted versus some questions that seem that they don't have an answer, and then is therefore answered by someone who has credentials in some field, probably not related, and then they end up talking out of their ass, and they present you with some facts that seem kind of real, but not the whole story. And so it seems like you have something to be afraid of that you really don't need to be. So I don't know, moving forward, I feel like right now what we are doing is just kind of trucking along. Like, this is what we've done before. This is what we've got to do now. But I feel like it's a bigger problem because of social media and the rapid sharing of disinformation in this day and age. Because let's be honest, this has always happened, right? I mean, we had the fucking Salem witch trials, and there were people against getting the polio vaccine for a very long time. I don't know. I don't know what to do. I'm kind of upset about the whole thing.
I'm kind of with you. Like, I don't know if there is a right answer. I mean, there may not be a right answer for everybody. Um, but while I do agree with you that mandating vaccinations for teachers as a condition of employment is, within bounds. I mean, it's, if you choose to take that role on,
Mhm.
in other people's lives, and one of the requirements is that you give everybody the best chance around you to not have some sort of transmission occur through you. And I mean, and let's not forget too that you can actually transmit and catch COVID while vaccinated. I mean, that happened to me actually the last time we hung out in person. You remember all that?
Oh
And
yeah. Yep.
yeah, and like as soon as I knew, I was like, oh, hey, when we hung out, we're all hugging on each other last weekend. Well, and I'm pretty
Which
sure that that COVID transmission occurred through my kids through their school. That seems the
yeah.
most logical thing.
Yeah.
And just to talk a little bit about my family's COVID journey, we've all had it twice now. The first time in February of 2020, when it was like not even acknowledged in the media as a thing. And the reason and I didn't get a positive COVID test to like prove it scientifically that we had COVID. So there's that. But every symptom that is described as being COVID, my wife and I had, and we kept getting like a little better, and then we get worse, get a little better, then we get worse, which we were like kind of mystified, like, what the hell do we have? We've never had anything like this before. But my kids, on the other hand, had like allergy-like symptoms for a couple days, and that was it. Now, fast forward to the last time we had it, which was what, a month ago,
Mhm.
6 weeks ago. Again, kids had like allergy-like sniffles for a couple days. And in that interim, my wife and I had both been vaccinated, and we were pretty asymptomatic too. In fact, the only reason I knew that we had COVID is I fought in a jujitsu tournament, and my highest level athleticism was a little off. And I was like, I kind of feel weird. Um, so I took a test just to like rule out COVID, and lo and behold, I was positive for the antibodies. So then my wife took one, she was positive for the antibodies too. And the very next day, that was a Monday, I got a rapid test, the ones you use for travel, and I was virus free. So
Wait a
I,
minute. Wait a minute. You took a test for the antibodies?
yeah, so I have these tests. I've had them like this whole time because I've been an essential worker and out in this stuff that they test for like the short acting antibodies and the long acting antibodies. And it's just like a blood test. You prick your finger, you put it in the little thing, and it looks kind of like a pregnancy test. And I've been negative, that I've taken like, a dozen of these things over the last, year and a half, and been negative, negative, negative. And I was like, wow, I've been really lucky. And then the last time I took it, it came up for the short acting antibodies for both my wife and I. She's been taking them too.
Well, I just wanted to interject, and here's where we might have a fun little argument on our little podcast here. You can have a positive antibody test after being vaccinated. So that could be from the vaccine.
Oh, yes, I knew that. And actually I had taken the tests. My wife and I had both taken the tests after being vaccinated and had to come up negative.
Okay. Well, and it takes a few weeks for that to really
Yeah, all the
get going
time,
in the
James.
system.
All the
All right.
time.
I'm just trying to
No,
find
that's
out where you're full of shit because that was very weird. That was
Uh,
very weird that you had a positive test, and then I want people to know that I am aware that an antibody test completely different things, and there could have been a lot going on there. But if was indeed COVID that you had, it sort of proves that you have the vaccine and you have much milder symptoms.
Well, yeah, and
And,
that actually was
you know,
something I
did
wanted
you
to
have a
talk
chain
about.
reaction of people popping up positive around you? Was that?
No, not really. I mean, there were people that came up positive. So the other place I may have gotten it is a jujitsu tournament. Obviously when you're, doing jujitsu, you're like up close and personal with people. And while
Yeah.
jujitsu people are extremely clean, um, there was a couple of cases, people I knew about after that tournament. But there were also a few cases around my kid's school right around that same time. So
Yeah.
kind of hard to say, but but
Tell
I
where it comes from. That's for sure.
but I do agree that, I mean, there's two things. We had COVID before, that probably helped with symptoms, but it seems kind of remiss for us to assume that the vaccinations had, nothing but a positive effect on our symptoms. So, I go through this long ass drawn out monologue about our COVID experience because it brings me back around to kind of what we're talking about with the kids in the school. And, I think, yeah, mandate vaccinations for the teachers, totally appropriate. But I actually
But
disagree that we can mandate vaccinations for the kids. And the
okay,
reason
we have vaccine mandates for children for other vaccines. So why is
we
this
do,
different?
I actually don't agree with that either. And if that means pull your kid out of school and like do
So,
something else, I mean, that's a choice that somebody with resources can make. But if you're not wanting to vaccinate your child and you're kind of like many of our students' families in crisis mode already and don't have the resources to make that choice, you're kind of stuck. And, I mentioned how few cases become result in complications for children under 17. It's really not, COVID is not any more dangerous than our normal seasonal flus and colds for kids. And that isn't just my opinion. That's me looking up the numbers on the CDC website and going, huh, isn't that odd? But where it is different is if kids bring it home to their parents who are unvaccinated and susceptible to complications from COVID and could, best case get very
right,
sick, worst case die.
which was always right, which was always the original argument with, the whole stay-at-home orders and quarantining children for a frickin' year plus, in the first place was, and I remember having this conversation. I looked up something about, how many children live with grandparents, for instance, the high risk group, right? And
Right.
that's not even people that have high risk health issues. This is just grandparents because of the age factor. Over 8 million children. So we're talking about 8 million plus just because their children are going to and from school and possibly bringing it home. Now, while we just considered that the vaccine does considerably lower your risk of death and hospitalization, with the waning protection that it offers, which is why now all of us are getting our boosters. I'm getting mine today in about an hour and a half here. Yeah, about an hour and a half. Um, uh, it's still a high risk for people who are older. I think the age is 70 and up. I could be misquoting, it could be 80 and up, but there's still a high risk for them even after vaccination because we don't yet have like a herd immunity percentage of people vaccinated in this country. So, in a sense, if we were to get 5 and up vaccinated, most of them, that would raise the overall population rate of vaccination, which could possibly finally push us over into herd immunity. We're already seeing the Delta variant sort of lose steam here. It's infected enough people. It's kind of, waning itself out. A lot of us are worried about the holidays. I'm worried about the holidays. I'd love to have some family over who are not vaccinated. But I'm getting my booster before that happens so that I'm less of a point of contact because, I have my classroom to worry about and I have other family members to have to worry about. So um, I feel like people are going to be more worried about vaccinating their children because they don't want to upset the delicate process of their physical development, right?
Right.
But it's the same situation where what they need to do is really take the time to dig in deep and read up on the research that has been peer reviewed and universally accepted, so that they can make the best decision possible. A lot of what we vaccinate in this country isn't just for the individual, but for your neighbors and your loved ones around you. That's why doing this as a doing this for public health reasons is what the focus is with this. It's not necessarily saving our kids, which a lot of children do get infected from and do die from COVID as well, as much as it is making sure that we're still protecting the other members in our community. Because we
Right.
have to stop.
And I actually agree that I think anybody that's actually looked at any kind of research would agree that it clearly shows that in most cases, vaccinations, and this is not just COVID, but any vaccination is a net positive in the life of a kid because it protects them, and it protects the people around them. That is like, by far and away the prevailing sentiment amongst qualified people. Yes, vaccinations, the benefits of vaccinations far outweigh the risks. That is a true statement. Okay.
Mhm.
But when you're talking about your kid and you're thinking, I wonder if my kid is one of the ones where the risks outweigh the benefits. And there's really no way to know rather than to take the plunge and find out and get the jab and see what happens. I mean, I really appreciate that that is a terrifying proposition for many parents. I mean, we went through that with our kids. Like,
Right.
are we doing the right thing? Like, and just so you know, we're kind of like mildly anti-vax, I guess you could say, instead of like getting all the kids shots the second they popped out of the womb. We like spaced them out over time because it seemed.
Oh, I did the same thing, and I am sad to say that I was believing a lot of misinformation at the time. What if one
Well,
thing this COVID thing has done for me is I have read and read and read and read and read, and I feel silly that I did that now. I've learned where those conspiracy theories came from and how they spread amongst the population. And so, like I said, I think it's normal to want to protect your kids and to be leery and to have a ton of questions. But I urge people to really dig into the information that's actually out there. You'll find that the risk of getting your child vaccinated with adverse effects versus your child not getting vaccinated and the chance of catching COVID for long-term effects and death, the offset is that it's still safer to get the vaccine.
See, I think it's not very far apart. Like getting the adverse effects from a vaccination versus adverse effects from a child catching COVID. The the kids aged 1 through 17, we've only had 500 and something deaths in 2 years of this.
All
That's
right, right.
a
What stat did
and,
you just tell me?
and
Because I
as
am
that came out of my
looking this
mouth,
up.
I'm saying only every one of those deaths is a freaking horrific tragedy, and I'm not trying to make light of any of that. But what I am saying is that if like a parent sees those numbers and realizes the chance of their child dying from COVID is minuscule, and they put that up against their kid having, negative side effects like permanent damage from a vaccine as being minuscule, it's like they're both minuscule. they're both minuscule chances. So then it becomes like, pick your poison. Do you let your kid just, go on natural and, contract COVID and, hope for the best? Or do you get the jab? And it's not really that out of line for people to not just blindly trust, big pharma or the medical industry either, because there's been, most of the problems in medicine every year are related to malpractice. So, just blindly putting your faith in everything being okay because somebody in a position of authority said it, most likely will be. I understand people being reticent to take that as gospel too. So really what it kind of seems like it boils down to for me is like what we've been kind of dancing around with, the like ideological question, who do you believe more, nature or the government, or who do you take your cues for more, society at large or your own, your own recognizance. And
I know that's what we're asking people to question about themselves, but you have to understand that the average adult does not have the same level of knowledge and understanding about virology and vaccines and the effectiveness as the people who are actually working on these things. And while the government is involved, a lot of this is private industry. And this time around, it was literally the entire world working on things. So, that's saying something.
Well, I agree that like coming up with vaccines that quickly was a triumph of the human experience. It's just amazing that as a species, we pulled that off. And I'm just in awe of that science and that ingenuity and that efficiency and our capacity. But, that being said, that was a rush thing. The approvals were all rushed.
No. Now hang
No,
on.
no, they were.
That's
They
another
were.
little bit of disinformation.
That's not
So
disinformation.
it's true to say, it is a fact to say that this was approved faster than other vaccines or other drugs for use. That is true. And that's where they're allowed to create this spin. What they're missing in saying is it's not the trials that were pushed through. The trials were done correctly, the same amount of time that many other trials in our country and around the world are produced through various companies that do these types of trials, okay? That was the same. The difference is the approval did not take all the extra paperwork and all the extra time and all the extra hullabaloo on Capitol Hill with legislators trying to figure things out and lobbyists trying to figure out money and all that shit. That was off the table this time around. And thank God it was. We cut through the red tape. Here comes fucking Trump with a Gen X statement from hell, warp speed ahead, right? It was the one fucking thing he did that was actually good, that actually helped us. He cut all that goddamn red tape. That's why it went through faster. It's not that the trials and the tests weren't done correctly, because they were. It was all of the other crap, mainly the money and all of the financial garbage that has to go into things that takes 2 to 3 years to approve, but not the rest. The scientists were on this fucking shit all the way back in like December.
Yeah, it was amazing. But there was a period of time where people were getting vaccinated that this vaccination, that the vaccines were not FDA approved. Now they are. But believe me, those first few months, like I wasn't getting the vaccination. I wanted to see what happened. I was doing my own
I get
research.
I get it. I get it. And not that we all trust the FDA with everything, because you and I both know that there's a lot of homeopathic stuff that never gets approved by the FDA. And that does have to do with money.
Every expert is fallible. Every organization is fallible. Every institution is fallible. That's all I'm saying.
Yes, but not so much so that I can then turn and say something like ivermectin is also going to work, or hydroxychloroquine is saving fucking lives. You want something FDA approved, but then you don't fucking accept the fact that that shit's not FDA approved, without admitting that it's just bipartisanship, at its conspiratorial finest.
Political bullshit is a whole other story. But listen, my wife is tapping at my window, saying it's time to go for our Sunday walk. So I should probably
Oh, how
go off this.
beautiful.
And you got to go get
Okay,
tab number 3, right?
I do, and I have to drop my kid off to go finish this project they're working on for the weekend. But, we go?
What's that?
Hello?
Hello.
Oh shit.
Are you still
Am
there?
I off? Did he go?
No,
He's
dude, I'm
gone?
still here. What's going on?
It's still recording. Okay, I'm going to say it. I don't know where he went. I found some stats. So it's true that less than 700 children have died of COVID in this country. It's something like 660 something or something like that. But more than 830 or 8,300 kids aged 5 to 11 have been hospitalized with COVID-19 because of serious illness. And more than 5,200 children and teens have developed MISC, or a multi-system inflammatory syndrome in children, which is linked to COVID-19. Really, I have no idea where Bill went. Are you there?
I'm here. Can you hear
You're
me?
here.
Yeah,
Yeah,
sorry,
I don't know where
my
you went.
internet went out for a second.
Huh.
Yeah, I don't know.
And then the other part said roughly 30% of kids hospitalized with COVID-19 had no underlying health conditions that would have put them at increased risk. So while the death rate for children has been significantly lower for children, there have still been other risks involved for children. So it's still
Yeah,
a high risk.
I'm not denying it's like good to catch COVID. or I'm not saying it, but what I'm saying is
What I mean, once we post this, yes.
well, so
Go ahead.
let's end on that note and let's post it up and we can respond to the maelstrom of a criticism from both sides that will likely ensue.
Yeah. Well, and honestly, I feel like shorter podcasts will get listened to easier. You know, people don't have an hour drive for this shit. They have 20 minutes.
They do if they're Californian.
That'd be fun.
Right. And this is the podcast.
No.
They'll be in their car for 3 hours a day. They can certainly listen to this little snippet.
Yeah. All right.
All right. Should we call it a day?
Well, have a great Sunday. Enjoy your walk. Tell the fam I said hello.
I will. And you have a great day too, Roxy. Thank you.
Thanks, hon. All right.
Bye.
Bye.